Welcome back, viewers. We're still here in Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi. Now, the UK general, the top UK general, mind you, who is part of the US-led coalition against ISIS, or Daesh, as it is known as well, has said that there is no increased threat from Iranian-backed forces either in Iraq or Syria, and that is a direct contradiction of the U.S.'s entire reason to build up forces in this region. The U.S. Central Command coming out against what the UK general said, rebuking him publicly, saying that they are on high alert due to what is perceived to be an Iranian threat. What is behind these conflicting versions of the reality on the ground, and is Iran and or its proxies, quote unquote, a real threat to the U.S. and the West as a whole? To discuss all of that a bit further, we're now joined by our esteemed panelists. Firstly, we're joined by Zenonas Tziarras, who is a researcher at the Peace Research Institute Oslo, known as PRIO. He is part of their Cyprus Center. He is joining us now from Nicosia in Cyprus via Skype. We're also joined by Hadi Wahab, who is a doctoral researcher and postgraduate teacher assistant at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies at the University of Exeter. His topic of research is Hezbollah, a regional armed non-state actor. He's joining us now from Exeter via Skype. And we're also joined finally by Giuliano Bivolci, who is with the Intelligence Unit Director at Association of Studies, Research and Internationalization in Eurasia and Africa, known as ASRIE. He is joining us now from the Italian capital, Rome. Giuliano, Hadi, and Zenonas, thank you all for joining us. Zenonas, I'd like to start with you. What do you make of these conflicting statements coming out of top Western generals?
Let me start by saying that the U.S. seems to be trying to manage the damage that itself brought about over the past decade or so, maybe 15 years since the beginning of the Iraq War in 2003. It essentially created huge power vacuums in the area that allowed Iran to fill those vacuums and increase its influence over the region, from Syria and Iraq to Lebanon, and of course Hamas and Yemen and so on. So what they're trying to do now is limit that influence and power that Iran managed to gain. However, these statements coming from the British general in Iraq show that there are some cracks in, I would say, in the Western alliance as far as the Iranian threat is concerned, and that the rest of the partners, the Western partners, not least the P5+1 partners that were part of the nuclear agreement with Iran, do not want to see an escalation and would rather to follow the diplomatic route to solving this problem and basically reinforce the agreement rather than see it collapse entirely.
Hadi, what do you make of it? Do you think that this quote-unquote Iranian threat is being overstated?
Look, first I have to say that whether what General Rika said is true or not, it's a good thing that he said it, because this kind of de-escalates the situation. That's first. Second, I partially agree with what he said, because even though they're prepared or not, or now they are getting prepared, they're like last year, Reuters reported that backed Iranian forces in Iraq received ballistic missiles from Iran. So this is not new. But look, Hezbollah went from Lebanon to Syria to fight for the interest of the whole axis. Iraqi militias came from Afghanistan and they came from Iraq to fight in Syria. So whoever came into Syria to fight for the axis and for its interests, they're definitely gonna fight for Iran if something happened. So let's hope this doesn't happen, and I doubt that something is gonna happen, because even Trump doesn't want that. And the Iranians, like yesterday, Jawad Zarif said that Iran's foreign minister said that they don't want a war, and Khamenei said that there's gonna be no war. So both of them don't want war. But Iran's expansion in the region and its influence are increasing. That's sure. I would agree on that. But it's not now. It's not recent. It's not new. It's like since 2003 and since 1990, since 1982 in Lebanon. It's not recent. But yes, they're trying to prevent further expansion.
Okay, so Giuliano, I wonder what you make of that. Do you think that division amongst allies is, as Zenonas there said, down to the fact that the other members of the nuclear deal agreement want to preserve it, especially the Europeans, for example?
Well, it is clear that the European side, the European countries would like to preserve the deal, the nuclear deal, and the words of the British officer, British generals, they are clear. They are clear that, and they are against the USA statements. So, according to my opinion, I believe that the European countries are more interested in preserving the Iranian nuclear deal than going to another conflict in the Middle Eastern region. Because also they understood that another conflict will make the conditions to a new radicalization process, and also will help organization like jihadist organization to take advantage of the situation.
Zenonas, I wonder what you make of what many are saying is a march to war. Many people comparing what's happening right now with possibly the march to the war in Iraq back in George W. Bush's days. Not obviously an exact parallel, but if you have an aircraft carrier group, B-52 bombers, Patriot defense missiles, amphibious transport docks being deployed to the Middle East, as well as the U.S. Embassy in Iraq ordering non-essential, non-emergency government staff to immediately leave, and then talk about 120,000 troops possibly coming to the Middle East. All of that really sounds like a march to war, doesn't it, Zenonas?
Yes, it does, and definitely this environment that this discussion is creating is not helpful at all, and it's prone to accidents and miscalculations that could actually lead to conflict and confrontation. But to be honest, the military forces that are being deployed there from the Americans for now don't seem to aiming for a full-scale intervention or invasion. Actually, what they could do is maybe conduct some surgical strikes in nuclear sites or ballistic missile sites. What they mostly want to do is send a signal to Iran that they are there, they have the capacity and the capability and the willingness to retaliate in case Iran tries to do anything or hit or inflict harm on any Western interest in the area, be that in Saudi Arabia or Iraq or the UAE and so on. So I don't think, and I agree with the previous colleagues that talked, that no one really wants a full-scale confrontation right now.
But then, Hadi, if in the hypothetical situation, as Zenonas there said, there were to be even surgical strikes on any Iranian sites within Iran's borders, would the Iranians, and how do you think, and let me put it this way, Hadi, how do you think the Iranians would react? Would that essentially just be the beginning of a proper war?
If that happens, I doubt that. Let me agree that any miscalculation might lead to a war. But comparing Iran, the situation now in Iran, to the pre-2003 Iraq invasion, I find it misleading for so many reasons. Because first, back then, Iraq had problems with all its neighbors. Iran, Syria, they invaded Kuwait before. Then another thing is that Iran now has more than 520,000 military personnel, and they have 250,000 reserve, which exceeds Iraq by way more. And then the location of Iran is different. Don't forget that you have American targets in Afghanistan. You have American targets in Iraq, and we're forgetting Israel. So the messages that the Iranians sent, I think, started in Gaza 10 days, 2 weeks before, because it was initiated by the Islamic Jihad there. Okay, we all agree that the Palestinian cause is righteous, but it was a clear message from the Iranian. It started back there. It didn't start now. And now this escalated. And don't forget that Iran has international allies, such as Russia and China. And Iran now is very different. It has extensions from Tehran to Beirut to the Houthis in Yemen, they can close both the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Aden. And it has bigger population. It's 3 times more than Iraq. I don't find it. I can't compare it to that moment. And in addition to this, Trump denied sending what the New York Times said, that they're preparing 120,000 troops to send to Iraq, and they accused the New York Times of lying. So I don't think it's the same situation.
Okay, so Giuliano, at this point we have extreme sanctions in place on the Iranian public. The economic situation within Iran gets worse literally on a daily basis, with inflation jumping drastically. So many people would argue, Giuliano, that if there were to be an attack on Iran, this would be a fairly good time from the U.S. point of view, considering the Iranian economy is weakened significantly. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, we should say that also Rouhani say that if there will be a confrontation, a war, this kind of war will be worse than the war during the 80s with Iraq, because in this case, the Iranian economy will be targeted and Iran will face economic crisis. But let me express my opinion that I believe this kind of, what we are experiencing now is a kind of psychological warfare. It's like the United States, they are trying to test not only the regional balances, but also some foreign actors like Russia and China. And so they are trying to test it because we should also take into account the fact that Russia is investing in energy sector, particularly the oil sector in the north. And recently, the energy ministry of Iraq invited Russia to be also involved in the south, and also China. So this is kind of, according to me, is we are at the level of psychological warfare. And the United States, they are trying to test not only Iran, but also its potential allies, and to see what is the reaction. Also because I can agree with my previous colleagues that probably if we see the military forces that the United States they wanted to deploy, that are military forces useful only to specific target attack on some specific objectives. So of course Iran will face an economic crisis and hard situation, and this can be a good opportunity for the United States. But then the United States should be also aware that the situation in the entire Middle East, entire region, will change and can create also opportunities for different actors.
Okay, so Zenonas, Giuliano there brought up the term psychological warfare, because that's something that, in fact, even Iranian officials have used as a term when it comes to this current situation and this seeming build-up against Iran in the region. Do you agree with that? Do you think this is all just psychological warfare?
It has that aspect as well, but it's not just that, because there are significant material aspects to the whole thing. And we're talking about, the U.S. imposing sanctions on Iran, increasing the sanctions actually, and bringing a country that is already in a difficult economic situation to an even more difficult situation. And that creates problems domestically for Iran as well, and might also hinder political stability at some point and social cohesion. So for Iran, this is very important, and that's why they are reacting as well. One reason is this, and the other reason is that because of these sanctions, they might end up being the only state in the Persian Gulf that are not able to export effectively oil. So this has a number of ramifications. So on the one hand, yes, we have the psychological warfare. That doesn't mean it will lead to an actual war. But on the other hand, Iran is under attack in so many other ways.
How do you agree with that? Do you think this is a warfare of another kind, but using, be it the economy or otherwise? Because certainly it can be argued, Hadi, that a much weakened Iran would, if not immediately, but in the future, be a lot easier to attack.
I guess this is an underestimation for Iran. First, I guess that Trump's foreign policy is rudderless, but I see that he's using the same foreign policy that Kissinger used. It's like we want to sit on the table, and we want to hold a stick in our hand. This wouldn't work for Iran. They can't go and dictate Iran what to do. it's not how it works. So yes, they are using psychological ways to do that, but they're choking Iran, and I doubt that Iran is going to sit and watch them do that. And it's obvious by what happened in Al Fujairah and what happened in Saudi Arabia. And like now, in 13 minutes ago, Adel Jubair of Saudi Arabia and Khalid bin Salman both accused Iranians of giving orders to the Houthis to attack them. There are a lot of interests for the Gulf countries in the region. They can't escalate. And even the UAE doesn't want that. Yesterday, they asked for a de-escalation in the region and for a good situation.
Yeah.
I doubt that there's gonna be a war, and it's unlikely to happen. It's gonna be damaging for everyone. We have Israel, and we have the interests in the Gulf. We have 20% of the oil passing from that region. This is gonna increase the oil prices. It's gonna lead to targeting all the interests of everyone in the region. I think both doesn't want that. And Trump also, he's not a man of war. I don't think he is. And yesterday, after all this tension, he said again that I'm sure that Iran will talk to us. And this is going to be, I guess, through or Qatar or Iraq, because 3 days ago, yesterday Al Jazeera revealed that 3 days ago the Qatari foreign minister was in Tehran, and when Pompeo canceled his visit to Germany and he went to Iraq, the BBC said that he transferred a message to the Iranians through the Iraqi prime minister. So I don't think neither of them wants a war.
Very well. We'll leave there as our final word. First, that was a good point to end on about possible mediation. Let me thank all of our guests. There was Hadi Wahab, doctoral researcher and postgraduate teacher assistant at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies at the University of Exeter. He was speaking to us from Exeter itself. We were also joined by Zenonas Tziarras, who is a researcher at Peace Research Institute Oslo's Cyprus Center. He was speaking to us from Nicosia. And we were also joined on the line by Giuliano Bifolci, who is Intelligence Unit Director at Association of Studies at Research and Internationalization in Eurasia and Africa. He was speaking to us from the Italian capital. And now, viewers, as Hadi there ended off, that was a good point to end on, and that about mediation efforts, and a number of countries' names have been thrown out there. Qatar is the one that is being spoken about the most as possibly being able to de-escalate the growing tensions in this region between the United States and Iran. Qatar has put itself forward to try to play such a role. Will it be successful or not? We do not know at this point. But certainly the UK general statement and the rebuke that brought about, the very public rebuke by the US Central Command, is a sign that not everybody in the West agrees upon this perceived Iranian threat to U.S. and Western interests in the Middle East. We're going to wait and see how this all plays out as the U.S. seems to carry out a military buildup in this region, and of course how Iran may react going forward in the coming days as well. That's all for Scope for now, though. I've been Waqar Rizvi. Thanks for watching.